Best do and don't advice for freelancers who just started. Let's start with don't. Don't quote your prices over the phone. It's perhaps counterintuitive, but when somebody calls you up on a phone, always double check that you should check what they actually mean, what they actually want, and let them send you an email explaining what they need. Let them send you an email explaining what they need, or perhaps even meet with them in person if that's possible, or a Zoom call or whatever. But never quote your prices over the phone in first conversation, first contact. The reason being is normally when somebody jumps to the question of prices at the first couple of sentences, it's usually just to check if he can get something cheaper. Now, while that's not perhaps problematic for you, if you are really on the low scale, it probably will be because he's not actually wanting to buy. In my experience, when somebody is just researching the market, what the price is, you never actually get picked. Why? Because somebody is always going to be a bit cheaper. That doesn't mean it's going to be a perfect solution for him. That doesn't mean it's going to be even a solution for him. That just means that somebody's going to do it cheaper and he cannot actually establish what he wants and what kind of quality of scope services he actually needs. So that's why it's always good or best for the client and for yourself to talk deeply and in scope what actually he needs, what he expects from your services, what he expects to gain, and can you provide that. So then, only then, can you perhaps have a glimpse of what he actually needs and how much time, effort, and work needs to be done to complete his goal. In my view, most often I had really bad experience when somebody asked me on the phone regarding prices. So that's why I just stopped doing it. I had a really bad experience when somebody asked me about a really simple solution, and I quoted the price that I deemed for a really simplistic solution. And the problem was that this price was 20 times lower than the price he was actually charged by a service provider a couple of months ago. So the problem was that this simplistic solution was not very simple, and he, of course, omitted every detail of the case order. But still, in his eyes, if I was willing to do it for like 300, why was somebody charging me 6,000? But the more I talked to him, the more I realized that 6,000 was actually a bargain price because, first of all, he was very difficult to work with. And secondly, there was obviously a lot of work being done in the past few years, which is a total mistake by the service provider because he should charge in between, not at the end. And third, the whole shebang of the order was actually very complex. And perhaps it seemed at start to be very easy, but nuances that needed more work. So the invoice was probably even on the bargain side. So if we go to the don't, always write down what you talked in person. So if you meet with the client, he wrote you an email, you actually did what was to be done, and then you just spontaneously talked about something, write it down. Write down what you meant, what you thought you meant. Best thing ever is to write down in an email and send a follow-up. That way, you and your client knows what you thought the conversation was about. And if the client didn't think so, he can rebuttal and say, no, I thought something else. Most of the problems when the parties agree, so when the supplier and the freelancers or the client and the freelancer agrees upon the price and the scope, or at least in general terms, most of the problems then relate to the misunderstanding because you think one thing and the other person thinks one thing. It's just about perceptions. Just like those memes when one person is standing in front of the six and another person is standing in the same six but the other side and he sees a nine. So one person sees a six and another person sees a nine. Both are right, but both are also wrong. It's neither six or nine, it's just a line. So keep that in mind. Always follow up with an email. We talked about this, and this. Is that correct? And that will be, perhaps you will get some bad feedback like, of course, that was clear, but in the long term, and you are in the long term game, you should always follow up because that will bring you benefits. or in terms of your personality, because you will be professional because you wrote it down, and also in terms of avoiding problems, because problems in business, in freelancing, means getting less paid or getting not paid, and also losing a client, perhaps even dealing with the problem of getting bad reputation. So follow-up questions, follow-up emails about what was discussed in person via Skype or via phone is also good. Don't rely on these AI technologies about writing notes, because they can be tricky sometimes. So even if you use them, double check, but best words, you use the summary in your own words, because those are your words and your understanding. And while you will be writing, you will also remember some other details that were perhaps eluding you while you were just messing in your head. Also, should it be a litigation later on, hopefully it will not be, all these emails will be proof of evidence in the court that you have submitted, you have done your due diligence, you have worked according to the standard of care that was reasonable. So keep that in mind. There are layers and layers of why you should do this. So to follow up, don't ever quote a price before you know all the facts, or at least lots of facts. So don't quote a price on the first contact, and always do a writing, do a follow-up, do an email. And if you don't have an email from your client, that's always a bad sign unless it's very specific. And even in that cases, I would suggest writing an old-fashioned mail and sending them to their address. And if you don't have neither an email nor their address, you're already in trouble, and you should really consider what the hell are you doing. Because the more contact details you have, the less likely the client will ghost you once you have done part or several parts, or all the job that needs to be done. Ghosting is a real problem, especially today. There's an age when you can fake everything, but you can never escape 100%, but you can do your due diligence and evade 99% of the problems. That's it all from me. If you need anything else or need an idea, drop it below in the comments. That's it.